Hello, Shafiq here, Shafiq Villasanti. Thanks for joining in again. For those of you that the first time watching this, this is my series of vlogs on YouTube about dealing with and living with and ultimately overcoming living with a mental health condition. And I am the survivor of two suicide attempts. And I can say that as, I guess, as comfortably as I could say, could you turn the lights off? Could you put the kettle on, please? Because of what I've understood is that there are so much stigmas and so many taboos about living with a mental health condition, and ultimately we don't hear enough about overcoming it. And how can I talk about it? Because obviously I've lived it, I've been through it, I've overcome that mindset that leads to it of suffering with such poor mental health. And day to day, I'm a confidence empowerment coach, a vlogger, speaker, public speaker, coach, and I guess author, most importantly, of this book. And this book is my particular story about how I overcame my poor mental health and my attempts on my life. And for those of you that don't know, my first attempt was in 2006 and the second attempt was in 2016. And clearly, both of them failed. I saw both of them through. I actioned both of them. My commitment was absolutely 100%. But it failed for a reason, and I put that down to empowering and helping people overcome such trying times in their life. So I thank Allah, I thank God, I thank universe. I can say Allah because I'm of Muslim heritage. It happens all for a good reason. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about, I guess, the emotions that we go through when you suffer with such low self-esteem, and how it affects you, and what's it like living with it day to day, and are you I guess trustworthy in society, and all this sort of stuff that I guess was really prevalent in both my attempts. Now, between 2006 and 2016, between both of my attempts, I didn't speak to anybody. I was terrified that people would find out about my history, about my condition, about what I tried to do in 2006 and what I tried to do in 2016. It has and always will be, I guess, there's a degree of taboo, a degree of stigma on it. And as much as people in social circles or in social media are now trying to break down those taboos, I think unless we talk about it in an open and frank way, then there'll be no understanding. Because for me it was all about, well, I've seen the psychiatrist, I've been to the GP, I've been to the self-help groups, I've been to Samaritans, I've done the coaching, I've done the CBT, I've done this, I've so on and so forth, I've taken the medication for a long time. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me somebody in society who's not trustworthy? Does that make me somebody who's never, most importantly, going to overcome this and always be stigmatized with such a condition? And because I didn't want anybody to know about it, how do I deflect those conversations? Shafiq doesn't see himself again, or Shafiq's not coming out, or is everything all right? And then in turn, how my wife dealt with such questions. But the good news is that those emotions that you deal with are ones that you can overcome, and in a lot of cases are pretty much temporary. Now, when I say temporary, we can be on this planet for 90 years. So if you suffer from 1 year's worth of side effects, or of low mood, or medication which gives you dicky tummy, or muscle cramps, so on and so forth, then in order to recover, I think I'd take that 100 times out of 100. So my emotions pretty much with suffering from, I guess technically I was diagnosed with chronic anxiety and chronic depression. The depression is just a heaviness, it's a fog, it's a degree of, I guess, catastrophizing every situation. I was never very optimistic about outcomes. I was pretty much fed up with a lot of things. I wouldn't say I was argumentative, but I was just disinterested in anything other than my own self. My own self was struggling. I felt unhappy with myself, so I wasn't bothered by anybody else. I don't know if that's relatable to yourself or people that you're living with. when I had signs of anxiety, I mean, that was probably more terrifying, because I knew the anxiety was ultimately leading to the depression. So in social circumstances, I was a nightmare. I didn't want to be anywhere. And the second time of trying to do what I did, my children were 9 and 4. So there's a lot of parties to go to. There's a lot of farm visits. There's a lot of outdoor activities. There's a lot of trampoline parks, ball pits, and all that sort of stuff that you do as a parent. And oh my goodness me, they were very, very tough and very, very challenging for me. For me personally, my left hand, this hand would open and close like a nervous twitch. But you had a carrier bag in there, and it would be like. And my wife, it's almost like a barometer. My wife would know how bad I was, because my hand would be opening and closing, and it would start to lead to higher blood pressure and a degree of anxiety and sweats and kind of just feeling very, very uncomfortable and really wanting just to run away from the situation. And this was even with medication that I was taking to deal with this. It was tough. It was tough to deal with such things, because I've always been kind of like, I still am. I'm an ex-PT. I had a great career. I had a good career. I get people to say it's a good career. Live in a nice part of the world. Amazing wife, amazing family. So how was I suffering with this? And that plays on your mind, because I mean, that's an emotion that you play with, don't you? You play with why is this happening to me? But as I always say, it was sent there in order to try me. And if you can overcome that, and it's pretty much temporary. If you're on this planet for 90 years and you have a year's worth of that, then you overcome that. And the medication that I did take did absolutely help, but it didn't alleviate it. I only imagine how bad I would have been had I not taken medication, or had I not done meditation, had I not done yoga, had I not allowed myself time out, had I not allowed myself to be left alone. Because when you're struggling with that, or I guess if you're living with somebody who's struggling, the person that you're living with, or the person that you become, is not somebody that is really relatable to you. You think, oh my God, how has this happened? Why has this happened to me? I didn't identify the person that I was. And I remember for the first probably 8 months in 2016, after being diagnosed and trying to do what I did for the second time, I threw myself into anything and everything that needed doing, because I was terrified of having that quiet time of sitting there. I remember particularly sitting in that part of the sofa over there, just looking out the window, which is over there, and just looking at the tree and thinking, I've just seen 4 months of that tree's life, from the leaves sort of being curled up to the leaves kind of opening. And then when autumn came, the leaves shrinking up and dropping. And I realised that emotionally, I'd sat there and I felt like I'd wasted my life. I felt that I'd wasted 8 months, 9 months. But in actual fact, I realised now that was my way of self-medicating, of just sitting there, because I was working 18-hour days. I was working 85-hour weeks. I was never at home. And it took a long time for me to understand emotionally that was a good place for me to be. A good place for me to be. So, for those of you that are worried about the emotional drain or the emotional effects, and you will be dealing with these, and you'll be dealing in the best way you can. But to run away from the emotions and say I don't like them is basically not accepting this is happening. This is the way of your mind, your body, the environment that you are dealing with it. As I said on previous videos, this is about talking, it's about opening up and being honest and being transparent and offloading the burden. And that was crucial in me latterly understanding, and my wife understanding, that the emotions that I was going through was a way of my body basically, I guess, kicking out the old me, getting rid of the old me, getting rid of the old thought process, and trying to create the new one, the calm one, the steady one, the one that's not going to catastrophize, the one that's not going to take or to attempt to take the sacrifice that I did. So I hope that helps with the emotions, and you might possibly identify that in yourself, or might identify that in friends and family. As I always say when I wrap up the videos, thanks for your love and support. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment. The algorithms on YouTube will always help the algorithms with regards to me popping up because otherwise these videos will be lost. And the most important, this is relatable. This is not some guy out there spouting crap. This is some guy out there who's turned his life around, who's so passionate about helping and empowering, and most importantly, proving to people that just because you have or have had a mental health condition or are living with it, shouldn't define in a negative way. Most importantly, let's get it right, in a negative way of who you will become. Because we all have the ability to make the most of our lives, and for some reason one door closing for me was another one opening. So I hope this gives you inspiration. Thanks for your love and support. Catch up with you soon on a new video. Cheers, bye.